Welcome to the educational research section of www.happynumbers.org. Today's video is going to deal with the case of a categorical explanatory variable and a quantitative response variable, or the case of C and Q. Now, if you have not looked at the video that talks about categorical versus quantitative variables, you should do that first, because otherwise this will make no sense to you. But I'm assuming that you have done that, so we'll do a quick review of that. Okay, we recall that we can classify each of two relevant variables according to their type. They could be categorical or quantitative, or their role as an explanatory variable or their role as a response variable. And we have put up this model. It gives us four role type classifications. We can have a categorical explanatory and categorical response. We can have a categorical explanatory and a quantitative response. We can have variable that is quantitative explanatory and categorical in response variable. And we can have a quantitative explanatory and response variable, and that's the four types. And the reason this is important is that when we're looking at research articles, we want to be able, that are comparing two variables, we want to classify them in terms of their role and type first, because that will then indicate what the appropriate statistical analysis should be. So we're going to look at the case of the categorical explanatory and quantitative response variable. Okay, so there was a study conducted. In fact, if you've been working on the Carnegie Mellon website, you've already went through this. There was a study conducted in which 54 major hot dog brands were examined, and their calorie content was recorded. In addition, each brand was classified by type. So there were beef hot dogs, poultry hot dogs, and meat hot dogs. And meat consisted mostly of pork and beef, but was up to about 15% poultry. And the purpose was to examine whether the number of calories a hot dog contained is related to or affected by the type, whether it's beef or poultry or meat. So we need to examine the relationship then between the explanatory, categorical type, and the response and qualitative variable calories. Here is the source, by the way, where this comes from. This was taken from a statistics book, Introduction to and Practice of Statistics, and the actual original source came from Consumers Reports in June in '86. All right, let's take a look here now. So this is what the data set looked like, although this is only part of the data set. So you had brand number 1, and it was beef, and it had that many calories. And brand number 2 was poultry, and it had this many. And brand number 3 was beef, and it had that many. And brand number 4 was the meat, and that many, all the way down to brand 54. So when we're looking at the box plot and the 5-number summary, take a look at this data and see if you can come up with anything about the hot dogs and the calorie count. This is the poultry hot dog here. This is the meat hot dog, the box plot for the meat hot dog, and this is the beef hot dog. And here is the 5-number summary for the beef, meat, and poultry. We have the minimum score, first quartile, median, third quartile, and maximum. Well, if we examine this, pardon me, if we examine this, the poultry hot dogs as a group contain fewer calories. They're right down here. And they obviously contain fewer calories than both of those. The median for the poultry is 113, for meat, it's 138 and beef 139. So the median for poultry is right here. In fact, the median is lower, very much lower than the medians here. And let's see what else we can come up with. The interquartile range is about the same for all of them. The interquartile range, the difference between the first quartile and third quartile, with the 50% of the data set, the middle 50% is about the same. Poultry is 42, meat 42, beef 40.25. The range for poultry is 66, beef 88, meat 88 and beef 80. So there's pretty much difference. Seems to be less variability in the range for the poultry. And poultry seems to be the best. Poultry seems to be, that, in other words, the fewest calories in the poultry. However, they all show rather large spreads. They all show, so there's variation. So there's a lot of variation in the poultry. And there's a lot of variation in the calories that make up the meat. And there's a lot of variation in the calories that make up the beef hot dogs also. So that's using the side-by-side box plots and the 5-number summary to take a look at the type of hot dog, the explanatory variable, and the calories. And this is an appropriate way to analyze when you have a categorical explanatory variable, type of hot dog, either beef, poultry, or meat. So that's a categorical explanatory variable and a quantitative response variable, because calories are quantitative. Let's look at one more example. Is there a gender effect in study habits and attitudes of college students? So 40 college students, 20 males and 20 females, were given a study habits and attitudes test. And the researchers were looking at, is there a gender difference? Will gender affect study habits and attitudes? So the explanatory variable here is gender. And it is categorical because you're either male or female. The response variable is a score on the test, so that would be quantitative. So that's, again, we're looking at the categorical, explanatory, and quantitative response variable. Well, let's take a look at the box plot and the 5-number summary and see what we can come up with here. This is the box plot for males. This is the box plot for females. And why don't you put this on pause and take a look at this data and see if you can come up with some general conclusions about it, and then turn it back on and we'll go over it. All right, well, let's see what we have. In general, females perform better than males. The females perform better on this study habits and attitudes survey. Generally, their score is higher. Their median score is 153, where males' median score is only 114.5. Actually, the third quartile for the males is lower than the median score for the females. The third quartile for the males is 144.5, and the median score, the middle score for the females, is 153. So there's pretty good difference there. The females' median 153, the males' median 114.5. The males show more variability. The interquartile range for the males is 49.5 and for females 35. And the range for males is 117. And the range for females is 97. So there's more variability in the male score than it is the female score. Based on side-by-side box plots and a 5-number summary, gender may make a difference in terms of study habits and attitudes. This seems to indicate a pretty good difference between the groups. But we need to be cautioned here, this with the actual study, because we were only a sample of 40 participants, 20 male and 20 female. So, summing this up, when exploring the relationship between a categorical explanatory variable and a quantitative response variable, or the case of CQ, we compare the distributions of the quantitative response variable for each category of the explanatory variable using side-by-side box plots, like we did in the hot dog example with the beef, the meat, and poultry. So we did side-by-side box plots. And we looked at the numerical summaries, the 5-number summaries, or the descriptive statistics. So when working with a categorical explanatory variable and a quantitative response variable, the appropriate statistical analysis is side-by-side box plot comparisons and the 5-number summary. Well, that's it for the case of the categorical explanatory variable and the quantitative response variable. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.